Who is responsible for Taiwan's defense?
Part 118.
The Spanish-American War.
ABCD chart for Cuba.
We will now do an overview of an ABCD chart for Cuba. This overview will concentrate on points in time and periods of time.
A basic ABCD chart.
Illustrating the steps involved in making a territorial cession after war, when no receiving country is specified in the peace treaty.
Point A.
July 17, 1898.
Surrender ceremonies, end of hostilities, beginning of United States military government jurisdiction.
The United States of America is the conqueror, liberator, and therefore fulfills the role of the legal occupier, aka principal occupying power.
Has the administrative authority for the military occupation of Cuba been delegated to another country's troops? No.
Point A to point B.
July 17, 1898 to April 11, 1899.
There are different stages of military occupation, and point A to point B marks the belligerent occupation of the entire territory.
Point B.
April 11, 1899.
In other words, point B represents cession by treaty.
In this treaty, Spain ceded Cuba, but no receiving country was specified. However, both the Commander-in-Chief and a majority of members of the U.S. Congress had already expressed agreement to Cuba becoming an independent country. Hence, the Commander-in-Chief knows that the final status for this area, after the period of military occupation, will be as the Republic of Cuba with its own civil government.
Before it has reached that status, however, the residents are still subject to a U.S. military governance structure under the authority of a U.S. military governor, who is appointed under the authority of the U.S. Commander-in-Chief.
Reviewing briefly the analysis of an ABCD chart, as previously given in Film 96, it is important to recognize the fact that
at the point of cession, the territorial sovereignty is ceded to the military government of the principal occupying power as an interim status condition.
Point B to point C.
April 11, 1899 to May 20, 1902.
Point B to point C marks the friendly occupation of the territory. Another name for this is the civil affairs administration of a military government.
at this time, is Cuba a sovereign state? No. Is Cuba part of the United States? No. Is Cuba part of Spain? No.
As held in Downs versus Bidwell, 1901.
As long as the occupation of the United States lasts, the benign sovereignty of the United States extends over and dominates the island of Cuba. Considering the provisions of this treaty, and reviewing the pledges of this government extraneous to that instrument, by which the sovereignty of Cuba is to be held, in trust, by the United States for the benefit of the people of Cuba and for their account, to be relinquished to them when the conditions justify its accomplishment. This court unanimously held in Neely versus Henkel 1901 that Cuba was not incorporated into the United States, and was a foreign country.
Question.
What flag is flying in Cuba at this time?
Answer.
The flag of the United States is flying. This is because the United States is the legal occupier.
Fundamental rights, under the U.S. Constitution for local residents are applicable beginning immediately after point B. This fundamental rights doctrine saw its beginnings in several Supreme Court cases decided in the early 1900s.
The U.S. Commander-in-Chief and his advisors should begin to discuss the best method for nurturing local groups and associations to come together and make plans to form a local civil government. If a local military governor, aka High Commissioner, has not yet been appointed, one should be selected.
In the future, the local civil government will want to set a timetable for calling a constitutional convention under U.S. administrative authority, as well as sponsoring a public competition for the design of a new flag and a new travel document, aka passport.
Such actions are not immediately equal to the local territory making a declaration of independence.